Welcome everyone to the SciManDan Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us once again. It's episode 31. I'm still saying the episode numbers. I'm going to carry on till I forget. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you. Joining me once again this week is my ever-loyal co-host, the man who would wash his car every Saturday if he had one. It's Catz.
I drive a Vauxhall Corsa. That is that is like the king of all cars, mate.
Wow.
A Vauxhall.
I don't know about that.
Can you only ever dream of owning a Vauxhall Corsa?
No, I probably had one in my nightmare, but I wouldn't dream about it. Yeah. How you been, mate? You all right?
Yeah, really good. Thanks. Really good. Been dead busy. What about yourself?
Yeah. You've been busy. What have you been up to? What's made you?
I'm writing a textbook at the
You're
minute.
not.
Have I mentioned it?
You're not. Oh my word. He's writing a textbook, everyone. Anyway, mate, I heard a joke today, and I want to test this joke out on you because I think it's genius. You might not find it. It's a bit of a dad joke, but here we go. Well, you'll appreciate it, obviously, if it's a dad joke. Where do bad rainbows go?
Where do bad rainbows go?
Yeah.
I don't know. Go on.
To prism. But don't worry, it's only a light sentence. Hey! What do you think, mate? Do you like that?
Loved it.
Yeah,
What can I say?
Yeah. Well, I won't take any more jokes. Let's get our guest on. Joining us this week is a mechanical engineer turned TV host, podcaster and author. She's an Imperial College mentor and STEM ambassador. It's Dr Shini Somara. Welcome and thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm good. That joke was awesome.
Did you like it? You can have that joke if you want.
I might use that a few times.
Yeah.
Forward. Yeah.
I would love to take credit for inventing it myself, but I don't take credit for things that I don't invent. So I read it and then I thought, Catz will like that.
That's fair of you.
So you join us on the SciManDan Podcast. Thank you so much for coming. So what first got? Let's get into the kind of the origins of your story. What first got you interested in science and engineering when you were young?
Well, in a word, Dad.
Okay.
So Catz will relate to this. And I kind of I was actually a creative kid. And so I was often in a dream world, sketching and doing really arty things. At one point, I really wanted to be a fashion designer. And so I was all things creative. But I have a very sort of geeky dad who is an engineer himself. And he really wanted his daughters to pursue a science education. And, you know, he was quite strict about it, which is a very typical Sri Lankan dad approach.
Right.
And so I kind of put all of my creative interests to one side, and it was seen as, you know, those are the things you do for fun, and you could never, ever get a job in something like that. And I turned all of my attention to all the sciences and maths. And I wasn't actually very good at them to begin with. I was terrible at maths. And, you know, I didn't really have a choice. You know, the plan was to take over my father's company when I grow up, sort of thing. Yeah. And so I just really had to be good at those subjects. And I plugged away at it. I really, you know, I got a few extra textbooks at W.H. Smith's. And I was doing like all these extra problems and examples and just really putting all my energy and focus into these subjects. And then I think around the age of 15, the penny dropped and I found these subjects beautiful. I don't know what the switch was, but I went from feeling very intimidated by these subjects and quite frankly hating them to absolutely loving them. And engineering then seemed like a very natural thing to do, because I got to a point where I really wanted to understand how the world works. Yeah. And science really does help you to explain some of the marvels that we have on this planet.
Absolutely. It's kind of a key age, isn't it? That kind of mid-teen age. I mean, Catz will agree. I mean, teaching that sort of age group. I was quite similar, actually. I had no natural ability in science. I was quite good at maths, but sciences, I had to work really, really hard to get any sort of decent scores in tests and stuff.
Yeah, I still find chemistry quite intimidating, like all those molar masses.
Yeah.
I might have to read your textbook, Catz.
They are quite abstract concepts, aren't they? Science, like it's quite like biology. A lot of people look at it and say, well, they hear about the heart and the cardiovascular system and stuff like that in the real world, but you don't, because you don't hear about those things in the real world. It's not that complicated, but they are abstract, you know. And I think that causes problems with kids a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's where maths is quite intimidating because it is quite abstract. But then it's so much more logical in my mind anyway, compared to chemistry, where there's just all these concepts that I think you're right. Like with biology, we come across a lot of what we study and we're like, okay, heart, we've all got one of those. Whereas with chemistry, it just was beyond me. Anyway, I didn't need it for engineering, luckily, but, you know, I don't think science really is, it comes naturally. And so it is something, and that's why I do a lot of work to encourage people into it, because it's like, once the penny does drop, you're like, wow, this is actually really awesome. But you've got to get over that major speed bump for some of us.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? I mean, it's interesting what you're saying about being creative, because I mean, Catz and I, we're both quite creative in our YouTube channels, and I think it's quite rare that you find people who are quite grounded in science and have that creative whim as well. There definitely needs to be more people like that, because the creativeness is kind of what makes it interesting, isn't it?
I think we might be described as polymaths, where we're using both our left brain and our right brain. Yeah. And for a long time, I kind of thought there was maybe something wrong with me, that like I just was so interested in both. Yeah. Because I think the educational system often tries to pigeonhole us. Yes. And I would love to live in a world where we're celebrated for having loads of different interests. I mean, definitely in the work that I've done in television, I'm often meeting people that cross-pollinate subjects. Yeah. And so there is a meeting of like artists and scientists, and then it kind of gives birth to like new disciplines. And so I just think all of it should be explored. I mean, yes. What I think you really need for science is a curious mind. And so, you know, that can be in any subject, really.
Absolutely.
Curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah. I always explain myself as a jack of all trades and a master of none when it comes to science.
Yeah, I've often said that about myself too. I felt bad about it, and now I don't.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, no need to feel bad about it at all. You mentioned your TV work there, so you've worked on a host of TV shows. Is this something that kind of just happened, or were you always set on that further science communication role?
No, I wasn't set on it at all. For me, it was engineering. I had this secret passion, as I said, for the arts. So I loved going to theatres, and I loved fashion, and just... they were always outlets for me. It was kind of where I let off a bit of steam and just switched off from everything. I never ever thought that you could combine them. And it was only towards the end of my doctorate when, you know, when you're writing a PhD, you often have to go to conferences and you have to tell people about your work. And there's like people from all over the world that get together to talk about ventilation or whatever the subject is. And what I really loved was being able to see the light bulbs switch on in people's minds. So when I was talking about my area, which was computational fluid dynamics, you would see people kind of just suddenly get it. And I loved that process of explaining and trying to make it accessible and all of that. And so towards the end of my doctorate, I was thinking, how do I do that on a mass scale where I can just draw people into the amazing work that people are doing in STEM? And television just seemed like a good place to really reach a lot of people. Yeah. But it's interesting because since then, television has changed a lot, and we're now a lot on digital media, and, you know, there's amazing creators of content like yourselves that are just doing brilliant things and have the free reign. Because back then it was like 4 channels in the UK and there wasn't really much of a platform, but I think now the world has opened up. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what it's like with you, Catz, with the people that you have who interact with you, but a lot of people say they don't watch normal TV, they'll just watch YouTube of an evening, you know, all their favourite content creators. Yeah, and it's great. It is great. Part of me misses, like when I was a kid, you know, part of me misses looking through that TV guide and, you know, this is on Thursday night, 9 o'clock, and having that as a family time, you know. It is great. And the Christmas TV guide. Indiana Jones, guaranteed on Christmas Eve or Boxing Day. Indiana Jones, all the time. Were you Tomorrow's World watchers? Oh, yes. Yeah, I watched Tomorrow's World. Yeah, love that. Great. Yeah. Grew up with that.
And do you ever see How To?
Yeah.
I live right near Fred Dinage, and I used to play football with his son.
What?
Yeah, that's my claim to fame.
Wow.
There you go.
Amazing.
I once passed him in a petrol station forecourt, and I said how, and he completely ignored me. So
Probably seen that a lot.
yeah, he's probably tired of it. He's
I'm over it.
probably having a bad day. The first time I became aware of your work was through PBS's Crash Course Physics. I was brushing up a lot on physics before I was making a lot of my videos refuting conspiracy theories and stuff. How was that whole experience?
It just keeps getting better as an experience. Because when I was first asked to do it, I'd done a lot of TV up until that point, and I was asked to do this like YouTube channel thing. And a lot of people that I was working with, especially from television, were like, oh, this is the beginning of the end. Once you go digital, you'll ruin your credibility in television. It's not a good move. But I was really enticed by the idea that I could provide education for free through YouTube and reach people globally and make physics unintimidating and accessible. And, it's animated. So it was really engaging to watch. And so I thought, I'm going to do this for me. I'm going to do this for me because I really want to be able to educate in this way. And it's been one of the best things I've ever done. Like the other day, probably a couple of months ago now, I did a count of how many views Crash Course Physics has got. And there's something like 50 episodes, and it's had something like 43 million views.
Wow. Yeah.
In what, 5 years?
Yeah, that's great.
So it's really, it warms my heart to think that I have helped so many young people with physics. And I often get a lot of feedback, really positive, just saying, from young people as well as older people that maybe didn't feel that they could study physics at school because of whatever reasons. It wasn't, they didn't feel like they could study something like that. And anyway, they've gone back to it and they've, checked out Crash Course Physics in the comfort of their own home, and sort of like, they can not do so well with it, not understand it. They can rewatch it, they can pause it, they can do whatever they want with it. And it just is so rewarding to think that a subject like physics, which not many people are warm to, has reached a lot of people. Yeah. So I'm just so happy that I've done it.
I don't know if you've seen it, Catz, but I think it's so well done. I mean, you could be forgiven for thinking it's a proper TV show, but it's like a proper TV show that you can pretty much watch whenever you want.
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, I've been brushing up on it, knowing that today was happening, and I'm, it made me feel a bit lame about my own YouTube channel. Actually, I need to up my standards, I think. Yeah. But really impressive.
Do you know what? It was such a great team working together. I can't take all the credit for it. Like, there was just so many people that made that happen, and they all did it with absolute love and enthusiasm. Yeah. And it's just like, it's one of those things, when you just give, there's no agenda. You just want to sort of like give for the sake of, and the joy of giving. That's what I feel like Crash Course Physics was like. And, a year later, we did Crash Course Engineering, which was another great series, I think, because not many people really know what engineering is. And it's quite different from physics in the sense that it's a bit more nuts and bolts, like get your hands dirty type of profession. But not many people know what engineering is. When you say what is an engineer, we all have a stereotype. And I was really determined to sort of just give an insight into what engineering is, because it's so massive as a profession, and so, that was even more rewarding to think that maybe I could help change the stereotypes of engineers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so good that hopefully we've got the guy who does the Crash Course Astronomy coming on as well. I think it's Philip Platt. He's coming on at some point next month. The whole series is brilliant. And did you get involved? Were you involved in the writing, or was there quite a big group of writers?
So there was a group of writers, some physicists, and then there were people who weren't necessarily experts, but were really good at making digital media. Yeah. And then we had consultants. And then, you know, when a lot of the bulk of it, because essentially we took a physics A-level textbook or AP level, which is advanced placement, the A-level equivalent in the States. And we just chopped the textbook up into chunks. And so once the actual script was written, I was kind of at the end of the process going, I can't say that because I literally don't think that makes sense. Yeah. Or, you know, I would never say it that way, or that doesn't make sense to me. And so, you know, there really were so many different minds turning it into what it became.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, it's a fantastic series. I thoroughly urge anyone who's interested to check it out. You mentioned as well about getting people involved. I mean, you're very passionate about women and girls in STEM, aren't you? You've published a range of children's books as well on the topic. It's an extremely important part of science communication, isn't it? The next generation.
Definitely. I, throughout my career, had done so many talks in schools and colleges. And so I was kind of reaching students of 16 plus, often girls, but also boys. And I wasn't really, you know, over the years, I wasn't really seeing the needle move in terms of addressing the gender inequalities in STEM. And so I went through a phase of like, why is it that I studied physics and maths and then went on to do engineering and didn't even think twice about it? I only felt awkward about being a woman in engineering once I was in industry. But I was like, why did I just take to it like a duck to water? And everybody else seems to drop out of these subjects early on. Yeah. And then I realized it's because I was in that mindset from a very early age. So when you have a dad that's constantly saying, why do you think that works? Or how do you think that, what do you think the components in that toy or whatever? I realized that actually engineering and the interest in engineering starts so much earlier on than 16 years old. Yeah. And so that is what really sort of motivated me to write these children's books. Also, you know, when you study engineering and STEM subjects, you tend to be more mathematical. Like I like to express things in equations. Yeah. It's so much, you know, of how my brain works. And so I'm not really a wordsmith. And so it just, all the ingredients came together where I just thought, right, I'm going to write children's books and really try to address these stereotypes in STEM. So the first book in a series of 4 is called An Engineer Like Me. And it's about a little brown girl who goes about her everyday life spotting the engineering. Yeah. And you know, in writing the book, I already suspected this, but when you really have to drill down and write a book about something, you realize, hang on a minute, there is very few things in our day that isn't engineering.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if I can help young people to see that, that would be my job done, to just make them appreciate that everywhere you look, there's engineering.
Yeah. I became very aware of the issue when I did A-level physics, because there was not one single girl in my A-level physics class. And we're talking 15, 16 students. Now, obviously, as a 17-year-old fresh out of school, I was fairly disappointed in that. But it's there. It's there. And we're talking 2001 here, 2001, the early 2000s. So I became very aware early on that I actually, you know, why is this class entirely boys? Did the girls not like physics or... but you're absolutely right. We need to show that this there isn't a stigma. Absolutely, and it brings me nice on to my next question, because my running coach is very passionate about getting women and young girls into running and sport. Why do you think we're here in 2021, continuing to have issues with that?
Well,
with sports, science, everything.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very multi-layered issue. And once I scratched the surface, I was like, oh gosh, actually, this goes beyond IQ, because girls and boys have very little difference in terms of their academic achievements. If anything, girls tend to find it easier to concentrate, and so they're able to get better marks at that sort of age. And really, it's about EQ, emotional intelligence, and just navigating that whole landscape when you're that age. I think girls around the age of 10 or 11, they're trying to figure out their identity. I don't know what it's like for boys. I can't speak for you guys, but, I just think around that age, they're trying to figure themselves out. They're trying to see what's cool. I think for girls, it's a lot about self-esteem and confidence. And we have a tendency as women to sort of doubt ourselves. We're scared of putting our hands up to give an answer because we don't want to look stupid in front of everyone. We don't want to get anything wrong. And, it's that classic example of if there's a job posting or vacancy and it tells you all the skills you need. If a guy has 6 out of 10 of those skills, they'll apply for the job and they'll be like, oh, I'll figure it out. I'll teach myself,
Yeah.
Whereas the girls, if they have 9 out of 10 of those skills, they still won't apply because we always feel like we need 10 out of 10 in everything. And I think that's an emotional intelligence issue rather than academic ability. So I've been trying to figure out actually how to address this issue. And it's so complex because it's about the mind and it's about the way we're nurtured and it's about the way we're encouraged and supported. And I'm not claiming to be anywhere near the answer yet, but I'm doing my bit to sort of know that I went through those issues myself and that's where the mentoring comes in.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to do my little bit to move the needle in this regard.
Yeah, well, it's important to do that bit, but you're bang on about that age. We've got an 11-year-old daughter and she's going through that right now, figuring out what, where she is. And you talk about the coolness and stuff like that. I think it's slightly late. I would say it's later for boys. Wouldn't you agree, Catz? And it's older. I would say it's older than that.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely my experience with the teaching.
Yeah.
You do see, certainly when I've been teaching A-level, and I'd agree with what you were saying with the physics as well. I reckon about 80% of the people I've taught A-level physics have been boys.
Yeah.
But they have been boys. Like they've been, they've been, typical lads, if you like. But the girls up top, they do seem to mature mentally that much faster, And I'm sure, a couple of years later, lads will catch up. But there definitely is a difference in the way they develop in that area.
Yeah, 100%. I'm sure we could talk all day about this, but we're going to have a quick break. We're going to talk Cat's Curiosity. This is the bit where Catz brings us a piece of science news that has interested him over the last week, and we're going to see what he's got. What have you got, mate?
Okay, I wouldn't necessarily class this as science news, but it's definitely interested me.
Okay.
And I've taken inspiration from the way that conspiracy theorists boil everything down beyond its most simple point to try and dismiss entire areas of science. So one example would be flat earthers who will deny gravity by poking a hole in something Cavendish did 200 years ago, ignoring everything else that has gone from it. Okay. And it's almost as if they think that the first explanation that's arrived at in any kind of topic is the definitive explanation. And if you poke holes in that, nothing else matters. So I thought I'd give you just 2 examples of accurate predictions that have been made in science by people who are so far off in the actual explanation that it's comical. So,
okay, go.
1811, a guy called Johann Friedrich Meckel, and I've probably pronounced that wrong, so apologies to everyone. He predicted that the human embryo would have gills. Okay, he predicted that correctly, and in 1827, it was found that the human embryo did have gills.
Okay,
what do you think his explanation for that accurate prediction was? This is to both of you.
I would say something along the lines of evolving in the womb through the fish to the human, something like that.
You've read that before, haven't you?
I haven't. I promise you, I haven't. I didn't think
you were going to get it.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Is it right?
Sorry, I was going to pass it on. Yeah, you got it.
God, I spent too long around conspiracy theorists.
He thought he had a prediction that humans were the perfect species, and when the human embryo developed, it developed, and it had a stage of every less perfect species, fish being one of them. So he made the prediction that the embryo would have gills. 16 years later, they found that they did have gills, and in large parts of the scientific community, until Darwin came and obviously superseded it, that was an accepted explanation for an accurate prediction. So there we go. Last one.
Okay.
This is a geography one. Right. So, Dr. Somara, I'll pass this one to you. In the 18th century, geologist James Hutton accurately predicted that inside the Earth, we would find veins of granite rock running through multiple layers of rock. He made that accurate prediction, then it was found, but his explanation was way off. Why do you think he made that prediction?
Why did he make the prediction?
What was his scientific explanation, do you think, for saying that we would find these veins of granite rock?
Gosh. Because of the volcanoes, he wanted to give an explanation of why they erupt, or like, so he was seeing that they were like outlets for these granite rock. Presumably he thought they were molten.
So like observations based on volcanoes and stuff through, yeah, that would be what we'd expect from a geologist today. Dan, why do you think he accurately predicted the existence of these
something a bit further out there, like an ancient species buried them in the earth or something like that?
Well, both of you are wrong. He accurately predicted the existence of these veins because he thought that the Earth was a living organic body, and that these veins literally were
actual veins.
Parts, inevitable. How would I say they were going to inevitably form due to the way he predicted the Earth to grow, and the purpose of the Earth was to provide a habitable place just for humans. So yeah, and then literally, according to what I've been reading anyway, when they did find them, it took nearly a century before his idea was completely sideswiped.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting, isn't it? Where you come up with this amazing theory and you prove it right, and it's all about, again, creativity.
Yeah.
Like applying some crazy idea to the evidence that you're seeing, and that being wrong, essentially. But who's to say that whatever replaces that crazy idea isn't wrong itself?
Is the correct one. Yeah.
Well, actually, you've hit the nail on the head, though, because what did replace that was wrong itself. What did replace that was the contracting Earth theory, and that wasn't the reason for these veins either. So there we go.
Yeah, brilliant. Science. Love it. Right, thanks for that, mate. Thanks very much. Right, so let's move on. So, Catz and I spend a lot of our time trying to refute flat earthers. Would you be surprised if we told you that they aren't just a group that get laughed at, but in fact have a people and organisations that take it very seriously and have a very large following?
I wouldn't be surprised.
No?
No.
They are. How many do you reckon there are, Catz? I would say millions.
Worldwide, yeah.
Yeah. At least millions worldwide of actual people who believe it. Have you had an experience yourself with flat earthers? Yeah,
I have actually. Yeah? And do you know, it really goes back to all of that about interpretation of the data.
Yes.
You know, and I'm often, I once did a film with NASA where we were flying over Greenland, and they have basically stripped out a P-3 aircraft, which is an old World War II bomber plane, and kitted it with the latest instruments to be able to monitor and measure the ice sheet that's sitting on top of Greenland.
Nice,
and they do this mission every single year, and they do the exact same zigzag over the ice sheet, collecting data. And I said, so is the climate changing? Should we be worried? And they just shook their head and they were like, we're just here to collect the data. We're not going to interpret it. And I just thought, I love that neutrality, because I definitely want to be part of the group that's collecting the data, because there's a lot of creativity in that. Like, how can we collect certain numbers, and what instrument should we use combined with another instrument? There's a lot of innovation in that. But the actual interpretation, it's a choice, which camp you want to sit in. Is climate changing or is it not? Is our activity having a massive impact or is it not? I don't want to get involved in all of that, because then it becomes really political. And I'm just an absolute true scientist at heart, where I just want to collect the data, and that's it. And I try and steer clear of any kind of politics. And often I trip up and I end up having an opinion about something, and I'm like, do you know what? I don't want to make it about that. I don't want to have a debate about this. I just want to collect the data.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same, but I constantly have opinions of people online. But I mean, Catz, I don't debate the flat earthers, but Catz has a good go every now and again, don't you, mate?
I don't know why. I don't know why.
You can end up going down such a rabbit hole.
It's very entertaining though when Catz debates them, because he more often than not he comes out on top.
Well,
good.
I think what you've got to do is talk to the people who are on the edge of that rabbit hole about to fall down, and just highlight to them, because they're watching, because they want proof that the earth is flat. You know, if you can highlight to them that the person talking to actually has fundamental gaps in their understanding and knowledge, then hopefully those people watching will be like, oh yeah, that's a bit silly of me, and move on to something else.
You've got to have quite a thick skin though.
Yeah.
I think.
Definitely.
And then might get back to the sort of gender differences, because sometimes, you know, I really believe strongly in something, and then I put it out there in public, and then I'm just like, why did I start this? But at the same time, I think it's important to have a voice, and again, it's very social media. You know, when I started all this, it just wasn't around.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, that's a whole profession in itself, dealing with that side of things.
It's very interesting that you say that, especially what you said about earlier about where you said, like, if a woman goes to apply for a job and she knows 9 out of 10 things, like, you won't commit until you've got everything absolutely right. There's very few women flat earthers, is there, Catz, who come out and admit that they believe the earth is flat. Very, very few.
Yeah, I can only think of one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to do some homework on that.
It ties in with what you were saying in you know, being absolutely sure in something. Before they commit.
I think it's the approach towards men and women. You know, we are, as women, we're very hesitant about having an opinion.
Yeah.
Because often, you know, loud voices can come in and just go, "You're just wrong," and then we're like, "Ah."
Yeah.
And so, in order to be able to sort of stand up amongst all of that, we've got to have a really, really loud voice, and that takes a lot. So much so that it's actually quite draining, and then we're just like, "Do you know what? I can't fight this."
Yeah.
But I think that culture is changing, and as time goes on, I do see more women standing up for what they believe in, and so it is tending towards a very good direction.
It is. You just got to look at the US footballers at the moment, the women US footballers who are trying to get the same wage, aren't they?
Yeah.
On that flat Earth scene, a lot of the males in it are, you know, they call themselves alpha males. They're bravado. I know something you don't know. They're very much like that, aren't they, Catz? The male flat earthers.
Yeah, and I think that's, you've hit the nail on the head. The whole "I know something you don't know" is what they cling on to, and I think, you know, we've talked about this in the past, that academically probably they have missed a trick at school. You know, they have come out and probably not had the best experience at school, you know, and they've got lots of gaps, and now having that knowledge that even their teachers didn't know at school suddenly puts them back above everybody else.
Yeah, and sometimes you just think I often think it's just too difficult to try and change someone's mind. And so, you know, kind of just stay with your opinion, because, you know, I'm not going to be able to change it. And this comes back to a lot of the work that I do, which is very much about inner sort of like knowing, rather than trying to convince everyone outside of you. And it's kind of, I think we've, especially with social media, we've become very outward looking, where we care about other people sort of validating our opinions, and we care about what other people think. And that, I think, can be very dangerous territory. And so I run back to my little science world where people are just collecting the data.
Yeah.
And I'm just, that feels safe.
The collecting the data thing is funny, because a lot of the recent flat earthers, they really try and bring science into it. And a good example is they don't believe in gravity. They don't believe gravity is a thing, and they attribute the effects of it to what they call relative density. So they're just saying if an object is denser than something else, it will fall. And that is kind of really the people that push that on YouTube, they really try and ingrain it in science, don't they, Catz? So, they'll come out and they'll draw diagrams, and the people that follow them will accept that as the science. It's very tough and very difficult to combat, isn't it, Catz?
Yeah, very much. And I think the problem is that you can show something that's easy to understand. You can take an egg, which is a famous, believe it or not, somebody put an egg in water and then put salt in the water to make the salt more dense and the egg rose. Okay, so you can take that and you can say, look, I'm changing the density of the water, and that's defeating gravity, if you like. But they'll stop there, and rather than ask the next question, why?
The fundamental, yeah.
And that's it. They'll collect some data, but they'll never just say, okay, well, what is the reason behind that? It's just like, this is what I've seen, that's it.
It's the fundamental, isn't it? Like, why down? It's, if there's a relative density, it could be either way, but why down? Is that frustrating for you, considering you worked on something like Crash Course Physics?
No, it's not frustrating at all, because I am of the opinion, and I've talked to a lot of scientists that I really respect that have the same opinion, which is that, do you know what? I'm happy to be proved wrong.
Yeah.
And so all of these ideas, that egg experiment, all of that stuff could lead to a shift in thinking. We may be missing something here. We haven't explained everything. We don't have all the answers. And so some far out idea, which may not make sense and I may not agree with, might actually be the one thing that creates a brand new way of thinking.
Yeah.
Which could then lead to finding more answers elsewhere. So, being open to being wrong, I think, is a really good thing, especially in science. Actually, science is the one discipline that has really allowed me to sort of deal with failure, because I think we, again, live in a world where we can't be wrong, we can't make mistakes, and science is all about making mistakes.
Absolutely.
Seeing and learning from the error of our ways. So bring on the flat earthers.
Yeah, don't say that too loudly. That was almost an identical answer to what Professor Jim Al-Khalili said about being wrong. He said almost exactly the same thing about there's nothing wrong with being proved wrong. Who knows what else we haven't discovered? So yeah, brilliant.
Humility.
Yes. Have you had any other experiences with other conspiracy theories?
I mean, no, nothing that really springs to mind. I just think it is really fascinating when people have such a different opinion.
Yeah.
And I think when you're scientifically trained, it can be very difficult to bring somebody else's point of view on board, because, when you've just come up with a mathematical equation that explains how turbulence works, and then someone goes, no, it's completely wrong, it's done another way, and you're like, but the equation works out. It's taking me ages to get here, and I can't not see it this way. I think that is a massive skill in itself, to be able to really be adaptable. But, we've already mentioned Charles Darwin, who says that it's not the strongest or the fittest that survives, it's the species that's most adaptable. Yeah. So I do try to take that on board. But I must say, when I finished my doctorate, I had written a couple of journal papers, and one of them, my very first one that had to be peer reviewed, got sent back to me because my results were not in line with what everyone before me had discovered.
Okay.
And I had to look at my data again, and in order to get peer reviewed, had to try and sort of be in line with what had gone before. And I was able to see my data differently, but it's kind of, that's a massive part of the scientific process, is being able to build upon what other people have done. So I do find it interesting when someone comes in and just smashes through that and goes, nope, it's different.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask you if you think the importance of introducing STEM at an early age is enough to combat these sorts of theories, but it sounds like you're up for them because you would like it to be the normality to be challenged.
Yeah. I think if it's driven by a motivation to advance humanity,
Yes.
then I think it's a good thing. If it's very ego driven and I want to be right and I'm going to, you know, come in and sort of like skew the data so that I'm proving I'm right, then I'm not such a big fan.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not a fan at all.
I think that's where 99% of these sorts of conspiracy theories are coming from.
Right. So that's why I'm like,
yes,
steer clear of that.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. I mean, me and Catz have talked about it at length, but we think there's a majority of them are in it for notoriety, financial, you know, going against the grain just for the sake of it, sort of thing. I don't think there's hardly any genuine people, is there, Catz?
No, and it's a shame. I mean, some of them carry out some fantastic investigations.
Yes.
There's a team called the Globuster team who've got access to all sorts of equipment. They got access to a fiber optic gyroscope. It cost them $20,000 to show that they couldn't measure the rotation of the Earth, and they measured the rotation of the Earth, and then did exactly what you said there. It was very ego driven. It was, okay, well, that didn't go our way, so we'll find an alternate explanation. We did not measure the rotation of the Earth, and then
and they said the ether, didn't they? It was the ether.
Yeah, they then invented. They brought the ether back and said, "It's the ether rotating around the Earth. Must be." You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, science is a very expensive pursuit. You know, especially with technology just becoming more and more advanced and more expensive, and so, you know, you have to look at who's driving it. You know, who's funding it, and that can often inform you about whether it's biased or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Your insight and all that has been fascinating. We're going to finish with something called the Scientist Game. This is a new game where our guest faces off against Catz. So what I'm going to do is start reading some facts about a scientist in chronological order, and the first person to correctly guess the scientist wins the point. Now, it's currently 1-1. So Catz lost the first one, but he pulled it back last time we did it with Alexander Graham Bell. It was a great shout. So are you ready? You both ready?
I am. Go for it.
I'll get my music. Oh no, that's not the right music. Where's my music? No.
Just play them all.
I've lost my music. I've lost my music. I had tense music. Oh, blimmin' hell. Right.
Tense enough.
No. Okay. Right. Here we go. Let's go. Right. Don't worry. I edit all that bit out. I'll just say, here we go. Let's do the Scientist Game. So, first one. Born on May the 11th, 1918 in New York.
Edison.
Nope. Graduated from MIT in 1939. In 1941, worked on the Manhattan Project. Earned a PhD in physics in 1942 from Princeton. In 1949, published the first diagrams which were named after him.
Feynman, Richard Feynman.
Oh, well done. Well done. Hot up. Wow, that was quick.
Oh.
I thought you'd get the next one. In 1965, earned the Nobel Prize for his work on quantum electrodynamics. Oh, Catz.
I didn't know anything else other than... Obviously, we teach Feynman diagrams at A-level.
Yeah.
Well, Feynman. I can never pronounce his name right either. How do you pronounce it? Is it Feynman or Feynman?
I thought it was Feynman.
I thought it was Feynman, but am I wrong?
Who knows?
You're wrong. You're both wrong.
Yeah. Well done, mate. So 2-1 to you.
Nice one.
Oh, mate, you don't get too confident because I know what you're like.
I'm not confident, but did we say best of three?
No,
And
we didn't say best of three. No.
I've got to do more.
I'm still bummed about my music. Anyway, thank you so much, Dr. Shini. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. Where can we find you on the interweb?
Oh gosh, website, myfullname.com, and then I'm on Instagram, Twitter.
Okay. Cool. We'll put all the links in the description. Yeah, we'll put the links to the Crash Course Physics as well. As I said before, please do check out. It is fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us. Next week, we have got Cara Santa Maria, who does the Talk Nerdy podcast, Catz. So that should that should be a good one. But we're done. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.